Science Talk, Responsible AI for the Planet. Please welcome to the stage Dirk Messner from German Environment Organization.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to our session on AI for the planet. We are bringing together here the twin transformation community, so those people who believe that we need to bring together the thinking and practices of the sustainability transformation community on the one hand side and the AI and digital community on the other hand side. As you know, this has for a longer period of time been neglected within our SDG discourse. Now we are bringing this together and making huge progress. And before we start with the actual panel, I would like to invite Achim Steiner, administrator of UNDP. And Achim, you are one of the pioneers in the field. I'm so happy to have you here. You have to rush to the airport to other meetings globally, but you are going to spend some time to reflect on the twin transformation, where we stand, where we go, what is missing still. Achim, the place is yours.
Thank you, Dirk. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just the warm-up act, and in part it has to do that I do have to head back to New York this afternoon because tomorrow is my last board meeting, so if I miss that, it would not be a very forgivable act in my work. But I wanted to join you here because one of the things since the Hamburg Sustainability Conference began last year is this interface between technology frontiers in terms of their extraordinary realm of possibility, and then the question, how do we actually shape the use of that technology? How does it empower us? How do we manage also, as with everything that humanity invents, some of the risks, some of the downsides of it? I think, Dirk, to you, but also to others who will take the podium in a moment, my deep appreciation also to many others in the Hamburg Sustainability Conference context who have explored this topic, not with a view of debating the philosophical extremes of a particular discourse, but rather to look for practical ways in which we can address these issues. I think we in the United Nations Development Programme have this year given our best through the Human Development Report to try and frame a way in which societies all over the world in their own right, citizens in their own right, but ultimately, and that is also a conclusion of the Human Development Report, have to act in some form of cooperative and unified commitment, because a technology like AI and the universe of possibilities is not something that you can simply imagine autonomously and remove yourself from what is ultimately an AI ecosystem that is now global, albeit unequal. One example is, for example, the environmental footprint. You will hear more about it in a moment. I mean, let's be honest, we are always focused on the extraordinary scope and potential that AI will bring, but it is increasingly obvious that it raises significant questions about its environmental footprint. Now, some immediately say, are you trying to stop a breakthrough technology because you want to worry about the environment? No, I think what we have learned in that painful journey sometimes that has taken too long when we talk about sustainable development, I take you all the way back to 1992 in the Rio Earth Summit, is that it doesn't have to be an either-or. We live in the 21st century. We can design technologies, we can design technology platforms that are already designed in such a way that they either mitigate or minimize or actually remove some of the environmental footprint and damage. Or we find smarter ways of how to deal with it. You have Dirk Messner, a dear friend and colleague of mine, who has also been working as the president of the German Environment Agency. And again, in many of our countries today, we are informing the public policy discourse precisely with the science, but also the regulatory frontier thinking that is necessary. We also have to work very closely with citizens. One of the problems with AI is that it is, again, one of those technologies where most people are conveyed a sense of you're totally irrelevant to what happens next because you're simply a user. You're not a designer, you're not an architect, you're not somebody who has any choices to exercise. And some of you will have heard me say, the UNDP Human Development Report on AI and Sustainable Development this year has as its title, It's a Matter of Choice. And I think we have to reassert that societal ability to be an agent in this discussion and not simply a consumer. That demand should define how a technology is ultimately licensed and enabled to evolve, rather than simply the interests of the supplier. Many of you may be familiar with this debate, but it is one that I think in certain respects becomes very practical when we look at many developing economies today, where institutional capacities, the ability to invest, the platforms that you need in order to create the markets and also the capital investments, the human capital, to be able to be an actor in this digital and increasingly AI-driven economy. So very quickly, we pivot to the question of how do we help countries to build their digital public infrastructure, which is fundamental to actually being able to be an active player in it. And the minute you start elaborating those scenarios, you also begin to open up a whole new realm of possibilities. On the chairs just next to me sits a dear colleague from Brazil, Túlio, who is now part of the preparations of the Brazilian Climate COP presidency. And for quite a number of us, this question of how digital and AI will in many ways transform the realm of possibility to act on climate change is extraordinarily important. And it goes from some of the basic things like with AI, you could increase by 20, 30, 40%, some claim, I don't know, I'm not the expert, the capacity of our electricity grids to actually transport electricity, because you can optimize the use of an existing infrastructure by leveraging artificial intelligence and essentially the whole frontier of digital and data processing. We need to also, in a context such as a climate conference, not only talk about traditional instruments of public and regulatory and fiscal policy, we also need to look for synergies between a technology frontier and a climate policy and action frontier. And I hope that some of the examples we will hear in a moment, including from Brazil, the Seychelles, and other countries, will support you. I end by just saying that what you will hear about this morning is in part also the product of pioneers and institutions having come together in order to curate such platforms and conversations. And here I want to refer to the Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability. I'm sure Dirk and others will speak to that in a moment. UNDP is a proud member with others in having curated a forward-looking public policy space that ultimately comes back to something very fundamental, whether as individuals or whether our societies, our governments and institutions have the capacity to be shapers rather than just takers in this confluence between the challenge of acting on climate and the universe of possibility with new technologies, including artificial intelligence. I think will define whether a world can actually come together around this or will find itself perhaps more and more in a competition and what could then become again a race to the bottom. In that spirit, I wish you all the best for this discussion, and may the imagination lead us forward. Thank you.
Danke, Achim. Bis bald. We are moving all together to the podium now. So now we start with the actual panel discussion. I thank Achim Steiner very much for your words, your framing. And as you have been highlighting, Achim, we have been making progress in this movement towards the twin transition. We met last time in Hamburg here in October to debate it. We brought it then, Túlio, to the Petersberg meeting in Berlin several weeks ago. We decided to have the next step here in Hamburg again during the Hamburg Sustainability Conference. We are moving afterwards towards Brussels, COP30, you will talk about this, and we would like to develop this further. So this implies that the AI for the planet, the twin transition perspective, is on the global agenda now, and this is very important. And what we are trying to discuss during this session is how we can move forward. So where do we stand? What are next steps? And we do have colleagues here from this pioneering group of twin transition thinkers. And the colleagues which I would like to bring to the stage in a second are Bärbel Kofler. On the one hand side, Bärbel, we know each other for a long period of time, for sure. And you are working in this field as one of the pioneers in your ministry. Bärbel is State Secretary of the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in Berlin. So you are having a German, European perspective on all of that, of course, with the global networks around your work. So Bärbel, very much welcomed here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. We have Túlio Andrade here. Túlio is a Brazilian diplomat. Túlio, we met for the first time only 2 years ago, yes, I think, and we had a long discussion about AI and culture. And I remember that very much. And Túlio was translating all of this into his strategy, because he is one of the masterminds behind COP30, so the next climate COP in Brazil. Your main thinking is now about how to make AI, as Achim already mentioned, into a mechanism to drive climate protection. And we also discussed that there is no automatism. So the question is how we do that, actually. So, Túlio, we are looking forward to listen to you in this regard. Then we have Luis Neves. Luis, we are also good friends and long friends, because Luis and myself, we have been living for a long period in Bonn. Luis was the sustainability thinker at Deutsche Telekom. And therefore, you are coming from the private sector. Now you are CEO of GeSI, which is a private sector alliance, a global private sector alliance, organizing around digital companies' sustainability perspectives. And Luis, what we discussed before we came to the panel here is that you argue that there are millions of solutions actually available. How to scale all of those up? What kind of structure do we need? Because there is no automatism. So this is the framework in which we are going to discuss the whole thing. And I would like to start with COP30, and therefore with Túlio. Then we go to Bärbel and Luis. So Túlio, I think people need to understand now why you are so eager to bring the AI case and the digital revolution together with the climate perspective, because this is not business as usual still. So what is the driver behind your passion, and what are you expecting from the AI community, from our kind of discussions, for making COP30 a success? Túlio, please.
Thank you so much, Dirk, and it's a huge pleasure to be with you here today, especially here in Hamburg. We have, as COP30 presidency, 3 main objectives. One is to strengthen multilateralism. The second is to connect the climate process to people's real lives. And the third, to accelerate the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And to that regard, we see the unification of the climate transition on the one hand and the digital transition on the other to being key for us to move towards a transition towards the future. And if we are to do that, we have to tackle AI and bring AI together with the climate agenda in a threefold manner. The first one is exactly what Achim was mentioning. We are living an AI revolution, and we have a choice. That AI revolution is exponential in nature. The data centers and everything behind it is very much energy intensive, and that growth in energy demand is also exponential. We can either have the tech sector as an ally in the energy transition, or as the very key obstacle for us to achieve the emission reduction targets and, most importantly, the temperature objectives of the Paris Agreement. So we have to engage the tech sector so that instead of leaving behind a dramatic footprint, we have the tech sector as the very key driver in investments in the energy transition, renewables. The second dimension is in relation to solutions. AI provides us with unprecedented solutions and opportunities in terms of providing scale and speed in the actual deployment of climate-related solutions, both in terms of the low carbon and the climate-resilient technology. That gap in scale and speed is precisely what the IPCC tells us that we need to win the climate fight. And then there is a third dimension that perhaps is the most important, which is about changing people's mindsets. The tech community is very much used to moving fast and breaking things, while the climate community is not used to speed, is very much precautionary, which is a principle that comes from Rio Plus 20 in 92. We have to bring these two communities together to merge the innovative mindset of the tech community with the precautionary approach that we have with the climate community, so that we are able to move faster than global warming, but to choose what to leave behind and to keep what is very important for us to innovate. So these three dimensions is what we hope to achieve at COP30, so that we can merge the climate and the digital transformations together into one single transformation towards the future.
Okay, perfect, Túlio, for these reflections. I think we will dig deeper into these three different dimensions in a second. Bärbel, coming to you and the ministry, it would be very interesting to listen to concrete examples of what you are doing in the ministry to exactly bringing these two trends together. No? Because we also see another trend that we do with digital and AI tools, things even quicker, moving into even unsustainable pathways than we currently have. So how do you work in the ministry in this regard? And maybe a second element, if you would like to pick it up, we as Europe, the whole game is being driven by China, is being driven by the US. Where do you see our role? What do you have to offer to global partners?
I hope it's working, yes.
It's working.
It's working, perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, part of the answer was already given, because we see a technology which is there, which will grow, which will be used more in the future, which can be helpful in the future, also part of solutions, but it's very energy intensive. So we as a ministry, of course, have an interest that the energy which is needed for this technology is produced fossil-free, is produced in a climate-sensitive way. So mitigation is a big topic, as a whole at the COP, of course, but also for us if it's coming in using that technology. And on the other hand, it can also help using or help supporting mitigation. So that's what we are working on also as a ministry, because there are environmental or there are tools we can use for mitigating, for renewable energy, if it's coming to smart grids or whatever. There's a big range of opportunities driven by AI, which at the end of the day leads to less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that is one part where we're interested in, is the mitigation part. And as a Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, of course, adaptation is crucial for us. And there AI surely can offer a broad range of information produced then, available then, timely, speedily, to farmers also in remote areas. So there are many things which people really can help to transform agriculture, for example, to adapt on new circumstances, to mobility, to the issue of energy access as a whole. So there is a lot of potential in AI to really adapt to climate change. So we see one of those duties in our ministry to support this access. And I think we are not the Ministry of Environment or Technology. So the access is crucial, because of course we see that there's a digital divide on this planet between rural areas, cities, between north and south, between poorer people, richer people, between male and female. There's still a big digital divide. So my ministry is working on closing this digital divide and making the new technology available for everybody, which is important. And that's maybe today a little bit a different setting, but I said that yesterday already. It has also to do how you shape AI, how AI is trained. So to get data sets which are not totally driven by American or Chinese language or cultural ideas, but are also offering possibilities to all kind of partners, to all countries. We're training, for example, or we're supporting training of AI on the African continent in Kiswahili, Uganda, and Kenya, Rwanda, so that you overcome also language barriers, cultural barriers. There's room for improvement on that, surely for that, but that's also something which is very important to our ministry.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Bärbel, for this first thoughts about AI for sustainable development. You took it broader and brought the social dimension, the access dimension in, and I completely agree. I think this coincides with your mental map perspective, where inclusiveness is obviously something which we need to mobilize for technological change. No? So let's come to the private sector. The private sector is driving, the private sector is dynamic. You said they are quick, Túlio, so let's listen to Luis then. I have a two-side question to you, Luis. The first one is about the contributions of an organization like GeSI, a global partnership of digital companies, towards the SDGs, towards climate. Where do you stand? What are next steps? No? And I need to ask, because you are here and we are good friends, I need to ask a question which came to my heart when I prepared for the session. Luis, how did you feel when you saw the inauguration of US President Trump, and directly behind him all the tech giants? So how are we going to bring this together? The tech giants being part of the solution and driving a technological process which might help us to solve major issues when it comes to sustainability of economies. And at the same time, from a geopolitical perspective, we need to have an eye on that. No? So how do you look at this two sides of the same coin?
Thank you so much, Dirk. And, I'm very pleased to be here with you, fellow panelists. I will go to the second question on second place, if you don't mind.
Agreed.
But what I would like to start with is that we exist for now 25 years, GeSI. And just as a matter of information, we were created at UNEP, at the United Nations Environmental Program 25 years ago. And at that time, we were discussing the impact of the energy consumption in the network infrastructure. We then evolved in many different directions, and many people does not know, but our industry has been doing a lot of amazing things. We did the first investigation about conflict minerals in Congo 25 years ago. So we created, we gave birth to OECD guidelines on conflict minerals. We supported policy in the European Union. We supported the Dodd-Frank Act in the United States at the time. We developed the tool to measure impacts on the supply chain, where we have now 20,000 suppliers globally. So we measure that annually. We run 2,000 audits on those suppliers to improve human rights on the supply chain and the environmental impacts on the supply chain. And we have been evolving in this journey, which is a very much compliance-driven journey. And so the role of an organization like GeSI is to bring the companies together to make a positive impact globally, being on the society or on the environment. And one of the amazing things I think we have done in 2007 was to look how technology can impact climate change. There is a big conversation around, the negative impact, and now with AI, that conversation is moving forward, if I may say so. But as we did the first report in 2007 with McKinsey and the Climate Group, an independent organization, we came to the conclusion that the footprint of our industry was 2% of the global emissions, but the enabling impact of the industry was 5 times bigger. So we could reduce 5 times the level of emissions that we were producing. And so we did the same report with Boston Consulting in 2012, with Accenture in 2015, and with Deloitte in 2019. And every time we do a report, what we see is that, of course, our footprint is increasing, but the enabling impact is increasing as well. So in our latest report, we discovered that digital solutions can reduce 20% of the global emissions, while our footprint is more or less stable. So I'm not saying that these figures are perfect. What I'm saying is that our knowledge around the research that we are doing are pointing to a positive impact of digital infrastructure in terms of the climate. But we are not realizing these potentials because we are not deploying the solutions. So we are very much in this conversation about digital public infrastructure, and what we see is that the private sector is deploying the infrastructure, but we still have 2 billion people outside that is not connected. And I'm coming to your point about the digital divide. So how do we do this? We need a stronger cooperation between public and private sector to drive this agenda and to respond to the challenges that we are facing. The other problem is that I do not see the sectors working together. Today, digital and sustainability are two underlying thematic areas which cut across every single sector. So you cannot have efficient manufacturing without digital. Health, education, mobility, buildings, and so on. And so that's why we at GeSI, we have decided to move away from our traditional approach to digital companies, and we open the organization to every single sector. And the results are amazing. We have now digital working with water companies. And coming to something, I think, I don't know if it was Achim Steiner that mentioned it, but applying AI to the water infrastructure, you generate efficiencies of 20 or 30% in terms of energy reduction. And so you can do the same thing with many others, but you need to bring the sectors together to realize those potentials. And so I would like to come to the point whereby we need really to cooperate stronger together, because the technology itself, it will evolve at the speed of the light. It's unstoppable. You know, I started my career in telecommunications at the time that the submarine cable could carry 200 conversations. The same cable is still there, and the capacity is unlimited. So this is where technology goes. So I would like us to understand that our thinking does not match the technology development thinking right now. And so we need to open to this reality. Coming to the point of Trump, it is a very challenging point. Of course, our members, we have 12 big corporations in the United States, I will not mention any, that are facing challenges, even, in danger of losing contracts with the Trump administration because they are sustainable companies. We need to understand that we need to keep the pace. Climate, society, growth, ESG is very important. I think that what we need is maybe to change the conversation from growth to society to the environment without losing track. So we keep the course. Our strategy is to have AI with purpose. We need to give a social face to AI. And I will stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we'll come back to that, Luis. But I would like to follow up again with Bärbel. Bärbel, you talked about the mitigation part of your work, and I understood that you are looking at greening AI and digital public infrastructures also. No? And I mean, we have now billions of investments around the globe in digital public infrastructure. Where are the basic mechanisms to get this into the greening AI and greening digital public infrastructure direction? I'm thinking about the multilateral banks. I'm thinking about the World Bank. So are they important players? Are we moving together into the same direction? And Luis talked about better cooperation, private sector, governmental agencies. Do you also see potential in this realm? How are you looking at that?
Well, if I talk about mitigation, it's at the end of the day that we have an energy system which is fossil-free and which is built up on renewable energies, to be frank. Because it's no matter if you use it for AI or for my washing machine at home, at the end of the day, it's how it is produced is the thing which is important. So if we know we have a growing demand on energy, not only because of AI, because I see that if I'm looking to the continent I was just coming from last week, 50% on the African continent don't have access to electricity. So there is a growing demand on electricity privately. There is an industrialization which has to take place in various parts of the world. So that is an energy consumptive question. We want added value production around the globe, not only in the north somewhere. So if we all take that into consideration, we have to go, if we want to mitigate all of us, the countries of the north who have an historical burden, but all of us have to go into the path of mitigation. So that means that any country has to have a strategy how to do so. The MDBs are playing a crucial role, to be honest. They can do a lot in advising the countries and giving them perspectives and also financial means at the end of the day for starting transformations and coming up with ideas. As a ministry, we're working on the multi-donor, multilateral levels on, for example, just energy transition partnerships, which I think are crucial because it's getting the dimensions together in transforming the energy away from fossil energy in the direction of renewable, but doing that in a socially responsible manner because people who were once coal miners have to find a work. So we have to have this multi-dimensional picture if we really want to be successful in transformation and that we want that our societies and the people affected by it are accepting those transformations. Because normally transformation, we see that in our country, sometimes is making people fearful, is making them afraid. And that's not always leading to wise political decisions at the end of the day. So we have to take that into consideration, how to convince and how to take away the fear. And therefore the social dimension is of utmost importance if it's coming to the transformation of the energy sector. In all those fields we are working. And the positive thing is, and the whole conference here is a conference to applaud multilateralism, to be honest. And that's, for us, the only way to solve those issues. We do that on a multilateral, on a multidimensional way, from the UN level, the World Bank, the multilateral development banks, our bilateral cooperation with so many partner countries. It's a multidimensional effort we have to undertake, and we want to be part of that and shape it in that direction.
Thank you very much, Bärbel. And from Bärbel back to Túlio. Túlio, the bridge between the two is the mind shift thing, I would argue, because you highlighted it in your first statement. No? So 2 questions in the mind shift perspective. My first question would be, you are traveling around the world now with this AI for the planet and for COP30 narrative. No? Where do you find and why the most enthusiastic twin transformation thinkers and doers? And my second question, if you would like to combine this, my second question would be in the sense of, Bärbel, what you said, multilateralism. No? How has your thinking and your dialogues about AI and digitalization shaped your thinking about international cooperation, actually? So if you would like to pick up these 2 elements and then we move further.
These are wonderful questions. Thank you so much. And starting with where we see the most enthusiasm and also promising solutions. It's precisely in communities that have been excluded from the climate debates. So we have been very humbled, for example, by the solutions that come from indigenous leadership, especially youth, in combining ancestral wisdom with new technologies. It's groundbreaking. At the same time, we also see communities, urban, poor communities in Brazil, in the urban periphery of big cities, also coming with solutions that combine community level, the local, with a lot of creativity and new technologies. So now, this is the moment in which we have to think about international cooperation, not only from the perspective of moving from an international dimension in which only governments play a role, but also extending and bringing the private sector to the very forefront, the civil society, but most importantly, those communities that have demanded inclusion and participation. They must be included not only because that's the ethical thing to do, but because we need what they know and we need their wisdom. And we don't even know that we need it. So that's the short answer for the first question. And in terms of international cooperation, we have a situation which is the fact that since 1992, when the Climate Convention was established, there was an international consensus that the climate fight was multidimensional. And it meant that we have 5 areas that we need to foster: mitigation, adaptation, finance, technology, and capacity building. But what happened is that as the convention was operationalized and implemented, and after that also with the Paris Agreement in 2015, these 5 pillars were developed in a very fragmented way. Now it's time that we bring them together, to integrate them. There is no way we can really address mitigation if we don't address adaptation, means of implementation, finance, technology, capacity building, if communities and governments, they not have strong institutions, not only for long-term planning, but also for preparedness and resilience. And that kind of resources, strong institutions, is also very much key for countries, communities at the local level, subnational units, to tap into the opportunities of the energy transition. And in order to do that, we have 2 very new dimensions of international cooperation that the emerging technology agenda brings to the forefront. The first one is digital public infrastructure. Digital public infrastructure was not there as a very strong solution when the Paris Agreement was adopted, not even mentioned when the convention was adopted back in 1992. But DPI now allows us to deal with and to integrate different kind of resources and data. The second set of solutions is precisely data. We have talked a lot about resources from the perspective of climate finance. Many times, data may be more important to protect societies from extreme weather events and to also tap into efficiency gains than finance. And what is beautiful about data is that it's non-rival. If data is used in one community, it can be used again in a second one. And therefore, a very key example, for example, is the Early Warning for All initiative by the Secretary General. For DPI and data, they are game changers together with AI in terms of international cooperation, but most importantly because they allow the global framework to be connected to local communities so that solutions like those that I mentioned from indigenous communities and also from poor peripheric communities can come to the forefront of the global debate.
This is about deep change, Túlio. I mean, we are feeling that this AI revolution, lucky we wrote a joint report about this 5 years ago, no? Drives deep change. And I have 2 questions at the end of our discussion already. We have 6 minutes to go. I have a more political question, Bärbel, to you. And I hope we get a convincing answer because this is something which really interests me. And then we come to the technical solutions and how to scale those up. And beyond and behind AI are both dimensions, the political processes of change and the technological dimensions which might offer us solutions. So the political question, Bärbel, which we are all concerned with, is that in most of our societies, we cannot reach up to 40 or even more % of our populations. And this translates into a democracy crisis around the globe, also in Europe. We thought we are stable democracies. We are not, no? And now we are thinking about deep transformation, bringing together the deep transformation towards sustainability, climate neutrality, with the even deeper, maybe, transformation of AI. Bärbel, how are we communicating this? How are we? You talked about access, you talked about equity. No? What is your kind of thinking? Because this internationally sums up to geopolitical shifts. No? We see a new authoritarian alliance around the globe. And this is part of our, needs to be part of our thinking about applicable sustainability, digitally supported transformations. Any kind of reflection on that?
Well, that would lead probably to discussion more than 5 minutes.
I give you two, no?
You give me two, I don't know. But only one aspect, one aspect. The thing what I was trying to point out a little bit is about how AI is trained.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's the data set which is analyzed by AI, which is giving information and which are taking people then for granted, or they believing in, or they think that's the right information. And we know that if AI doesn't know the answers, they are making up answers. That's the first thing. So it depends on how good the data set really is to get realistic answers. And then it has to be a data set which is taking into considerations a broad range of experiences. If it's only my personal experience which is fit in the data set, that won't be good enough, and that won't be an answer or opening the discussion to various opinions, for example, if it's only my mindset. That's why it's so important that we get in the data from all over the globe, that the global south, the local knowledge, like you were pointing out, is included. The debate on the equality of humankind is included, because if you get then a data set which is leading, well, in the last 2,000 years there were not really a lot of women leaders, so women are not able to work in politics. That would feed into a right-wing positioning of gender equality. So it depends on the end of the day how you feed this data to get an answer which is then triggering a hopefully respectful democratic conversation. That's one answer to a lot of, there are still more things to say about where our democracies are going, but that is only one point.
No, but I thank you for that, because the democracy problem is related to the kind of transformation discourse which we are having, so I thank you very much for that. Last point to Luis, and then I would like to give the very final word to you. What you are expecting now concretely for COP30, the most important thing you have in mind. And Luis, 2 minutes for you. You said scaling up existing problems is the main challenge from your perspective. Here you have two governance representatives, no? What is the main issue to solve, to look at when it comes to the cooperation between the private sector and governments?
So, do you want to
in this field?
Do you want to solve the climate challenge? Túlio, bring the digital world to COP. You have oil and gas. You need digital. There is no other way. Everything that we have done, and this is not to make money. You know, the members of GeSI, they are the leaders of the planet. So it's not about money. If you want to change, you need to bring the leaders of Google, Microsoft, all those companies to the climate conference and tell them what are the solutions that can really help us to change the planet. Every single digital solution, and we have done that for ages. We measure that, we develop methodologies. You can tell a lot about energy consumption of digital infrastructure, of AI, yes. By 2050, maybe we will consume 7 or 8% of the global energy. But you need that because you can help the planet at the end of the day, because the other side of the medal is by far more positive. And so my offer to you is that work with us, we can help you. We have the financial capacity, we have the willingness, and we are willing to drive the AI with purpose agenda. Many things will go wrong in the way that we are leading, because the world is not perfect. We will make many mistakes, but we need to work closely together, really to change and to make sure that we get the planet on a sustainable pathway. So our availability to work together with you, to scale the solutions that we have. I just came from Taipei. We had 1,000 companies in the room. They are eager to work. They have the solutions that can help the planet.
Thank you very much for your perspective, Luis. 40 seconds, Túlio.
Wow.
I like to summarize, but 30 seconds is too challenging for me, so it's up to you. What's your main point which you would like to leave with us for COP30 after the discussion which we had?
No, thank you so much. And COP30 as an inflection point, this means that we have to recognize climate urgency, but also recover ancestral wisdom, cooperation, communication, which is what makes us humans, but also summon the future to come faster, because we need to go faster, but we need to go together.
This is a very good sign.
I would have liked to finish a conference so punctual as you did, no? But I don't not only thank you, Túlio, very much for your contributions, also many thanks to Bärbel, many thanks to Louis and to the whole team here. And I think they gained a huge applause, didn't they? Thank you. Thank you, Madam.